Here we are after Memorial Day, and things are still up in the air for event planners and festival promoters all over the country because of the virus. We really don't know what's happening here. We all have our theories. But anyway, before Memorial Day, we saw a lot of cancellations and rescheduling. Memorial Day hit a lot of places, small venues opened up with live music outdoors, and we saw crowds just flocking to get out and to do things without a lot of safety behind them. So anyway, I had a chance to speak with Matt Polashek. He runs a production company out of Louisville, Kentucky, and they do live music events. And he had a really good perspective on this whole virus live crowd situation. So let's take a listen to what he had to say, and then in another video, let's talk more about events and event planning and what's happening both on the corporate side and the festival side. Anyway, here's my interview with Matthew Polashek. So to begin with, we've been talking a lot over the last few weeks about what's really going on with this whole virus thing, and you know, there's really no rhyme or reason as to what we can expect to happen next. But one of the important factors that we're finding here is that as the states start opening up, a lot of the big festivals and that type of thing look like they may be a while, but the smaller venues, people are just coming in droves, you know, to the open air bars and that kind of thing.
Right.
One of the things that, and before I go any further, I will do an official intro to this before the video goes out. But
Sure.
Matt Polashek is a top-notch sound engineer, sound and production for many festivals and live music events. And he's had some experience already with the crowds coming out for these events. And what we want to talk about real quickly here is, number one, you know, the safety factors, and we see a lot of people that aren't really thinking about a lot. So tell me, Matt, I know I've talked a lot here. Sorry.
It's totally fine.
um, your experience as they opened up, you just recently did a small festival,
Right.
did the sound and lights for it. And
Yes.
tell me from your experience, what did you feel comfortable with? What did you not feel comfortable with? And your general thoughts.
Yeah. So I was surprised at the lack of caution that a lot of people exhibited at this festival. People, I think, were really anxious to get out and get back to normal. They wanted to feel like they were out of their house, they're in a regular situation, they can relax, have a few drinks with their friends, and watch some live music. But in the face of the coronavirus, we're asking a lot of people to keep socially distanced from each other. And the folks at this festival were not very good at doing it. There were very few people masking. Groups were close together. People were shaking hands, you know, giving each other hugs. A lot of close proximity seating. Didn't look like it was a very safe environment. And then as a production worker, you know, during setup, it wasn't bad. I mean, it was a hot day, but people weren't around me, so it wasn't bad. I felt like, you know, it was okay. Things were safe, got things set up. But as the show started and things started to crowd in, I realized how difficult it was to socially distance myself from, first of all, the musicians on stage. We were in very close proximity during changeovers. We only had maybe 15 minutes between the bands. So we're up on stage moving microphones and getting drums on and off. And, you know, there was no way to not be near people. And of course it was very hot. So, you know, I was sweating and wiping my head, and you're not supposed to touch your face. So I'm grabbing microphones, I'm touching my face. There's musicians within super close proximity. People want monitor adjustments, and if you don't understand what they're saying, they're going to come up and yell in your ear. You know, it was very uncomfortable at times. And then in this particular instance, I decided to put my my equipment off to the side of the stage in an area away from the people, so I could not be around them. But in order to get the mix right during each band, at least for a beginning, and maybe if they change a singer or a different instrument was becoming the focus of the song, I needed to walk out into the middle of the crowd with my iPad and mix. And then I was very exposed. People would come up and say, "Hey, hi, great to see you. How are you doing?" And I'd be like, "Hey, great." And I'm just, try to move away from them. And where I had to stand in the middle of the venue, there were wait staff walking back and forth and patrons walking across, and it's a difficult situation. Very, very hard to see how this could be done safely.
Do you think that the venues themselves did the best that they could to follow guidelines in that kind of circumstance?
Well, all of the wait staff was masking for the most part. I don't know what was happening, like in the kitchen or, but the ones walking around were masking. Bartenders were, I believe they were masking. I can't really remember. But I don't think they were exercising any control on attendance. There were some tables, I think, probably removed. The tables were distant from each other, but the number of cars were parked. The lot was full. There were cars lined down the street. I don't think they had any desire to limit the number of people admitted to the facility.
Yeah, I know that when I first started looking at research on this, and it's funny how day to day this stuff can just change in an instance, attitudes and everything else. We were getting a feel from a lot of the festival organizers that it may not be until late September on into the first part of next year before they really felt comfortable with being able to draw the crowds in. The polling that was done to people that attend live events, sporting events, live music events, that type of thing, we're basically saying that it was a 50-50 split. About half the people said, I'm not going to feel comfortable until either A, this thing's over, or they have some kind of a vaccine out there. Memorial Day kind of shot all that stuff to heck and back.
Well, we're not talking about 80,000 people in a stadium or even 1,100 people in a medium to small size venue. This is a bar.
Right.
It's maybe maximum 500 to 600 people could even fit in the facility. So I think people would be reticent to go to an NBA game if it was at sold capacity, or they'd be concerned about like one of the larger, say it's a 8,000 to 10,000 person festival. I think people would probably have second thoughts about going there. I mean, how do you deal with the restrooms and hand washing that's required?
Exactly. There's so much extra labor that's going to be involved. There's going to be so much extra outlay of money for sanitizing stations and people monitoring. Like I say, it's almost like having a hall monitor at the restrooms. You got to make sure that people are, not crowding in there. A lot of the festival owners that I've talked to, the organizers, are still very hesitant to put their festivals on. Number one, they're concerned about the crowds. Are we going to even have the attendance that we need to not go in the hole with this? The majority of the organizers that I've spoken with are talking seriously about, if we go forward with these in September or October, we're going to be scaling them down. We're not bringing the big headliners in. We're going to do fewer vendors, and see, that's another thing. You've got to control the vendors too that are coming in, food booths, arts and crafts, that kind of thing. And then what it comes right down to is you've got that kind of a crowd, and we've still got to, I believe, talk about the safety issue. How do we protect those around us? You in your position, being a sound engineer, surrounded by people, you certainly don't want to be stick in the mud about it. But on the other hand, people have to look out for them. Now, we had talked earlier about some of the things that from your point of view that could be done at a festival to make it at least feel safer? And I think that's important, is that a lot of times this is all about feeling safer. Whether or not it really is, I don't know. But
Right.
what are some of the things that people don't think about that are behind the scenes happening in this environment?
Yeah.
Shared microphones, people close
Yeah.
together, that kind of thing.
Well, as an engineer and as a sound company owner, I'm concerned about how I'm going to protect my performers. I have, always, that's the number one concern. I don't want to drop like a light on somebody's head, or and I have a lot of insurance, but I don't want to use it.
Right.
So I always thinking about safety when I'm setting things up. Are things positioned? Are they things ratcheted, strapped down if it's unstable, or the stage is made right? Safety is a big deal. I mean, we've seen a lot of real big problems with safety in the live event production world. People have had some big problems with weather and wind, and so especially if like you're operating in Indiana, it's really difficult to make sure that all your stage has to be approved. There's like drop
Right.
zone. And that's just, and now we are adding on a whole other factor. We have, if people are going to, like at this festival, there were 3 bands, and I had 3 microphones set up in the front, and it was outdoors, so they had windscreens on them. And the windscreen is basically a sponge. So when people would sing into those microphones, all of their saliva would go into the windscreen and be absorbed in. Their sweat, all those fluids are in that windscreen. And then the next performer came up and they used the same microphone, the same windscreen. What are you gonna? You have to basically have enough. The only way to really do that sanitarily would be to, even if you switch the windscreen, the thing underneath it, like the microphone pop screen, is absorbing particles.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way to really do it is to have completely different microphones for everybody who's touching them. And in between bands, you have to go in with gloves and a mask and take the microphone off and put it into some kind of container. Maybe it has UV light, or soak the mic head in the windscreen in a bleach, something that would kill the coronavirus, and then wipe down the mic stands quick. And I mean, it's really a challenge.
And that's going to take, number one, take extra time.
Yes.
Between the bands. And again, the organizers need to think about that, is that we are going to have some extra dead time there. Be prepared to at least have canned music or something going on while we make the switch over. There's also an added cost factor, and somebody's got to bear the cost of that. I mean, the performers and the engineers cannot bear the brunt of that, but the ideal situation would be, well, look, we got a cat in the back. The ideal situation would be, like you say, have extra windscreens. You just toss the windscreens after they've been used, after a use, and go on. Those things cost money.
Yeah.
And then we've also got to look at how are we protecting the production people themselves.
It's really difficult. I mean, a lot of times during a show, you're right up in there. Yeah, I mean, they're bumping shoulders with the musicians, and people are going on at the same time people are coming off, and you're moving microphones and changing stands, and there's 3 or 4 production guys on the stage. Got loaders bringing stuff in and out, and they're trying to social distance. That stuff is going to protract that process significantly. I think it's probably going to take 3 to 4 times as long to change a band over, because you have to wait for one band to completely get off, right? Then you have to go on and sanitize, and then you have to get the production personnel off, and then get the next band up on. It's a big delay, a lot longer than usual, a lot longer.
And do you think that the audiences are going to stand for that?
That's a good question. I don't know. They usually, when we're running, so I'm the production manager at Manchester Music Hall in Lexington, Kentucky, and it's 1,100 seat venue, and we do rock and roll shows sometimes with 5 bands in a night. And we stack all the backline up, and we can do a changeover in 10 minutes. And I think if people when we've seen problems with our changeovers, and there's a larger delay than people are used to, they do get pretty unruly. So I can't imagine. I can't imagine that situation happening on every show and people being really excited
Right.
about it.
What do you think, as far as the venue goes? What would be things that you would recommend to a venue to have available and in place for the production?
Yeah. Well, you have to. Uh, it's really difficult to function with masking when you're doing a lot of breathing heavy, and when you're carrying stuff in and out of a venue, it's going to be difficult. So you're going to have extra hand sanitizer. You're going to have something to like disinfectant wipes for all the gear, gloves, masks. There's not even usually a place for the production personnel to be. Like when they're not working on the stage, most venues don't even think about where's that guy going to go. So in like Manchester Music Hall, the production guys, if you're not in the small 2-person space front of house box or up at the monitor console, then you're just in with the crowd. There's no place to go. There's 2 backstage rooms that are very small. There's a hallway back there. The bands are going to be in those spots. You have to provide a place for them to be safe, away from the crowd, distance. But even at that point, how are you going to control the crowd and say, hey, you have to stand 5 feet back from the front gate, and what I mean?
Right.
Like, how's that? People aren't going to follow that rule. They're just going to crowd up in the front.
Do you think any kind of gating around the production equipment is a must?
We always stanchion the production equipment. I think you're going to have to increase that barrier now. I mean, we'll typically, a lot of times, engineers want to have that barrier pretty close to their consoles, so that you can maximize the number of spots for people to stand. But now you're going to have to move it back another 6 feet out, all the way around the mix position. That's a lot of square feet, 120 square feet, more than that maybe, that you're taking out of the venue for standing room. But at that point, if you're bringing people in a venue like that, you're probably not too concerned about social distancing, because there's no way to do it.
Right. And most of the crowd, they're just happy to get out and be socializing and get that hug, get that handshake.
Even if they are, by the time the end of the night rolls around, I guarantee they're not going to be cautious. Their inhibitions will have been lowered by a substance or two. I don't know that you'd be able to have a belligerent customer who's been imbibing for the entire evening.
Well, we've already seen what's happened over the last few weeks with businesses that are requiring people to wear a mask coming in, and the customers that are just absolutely refusing and going off the deep end. And that's another thing too, is that I think there's going to be, it's a fine line for the venues and for the organizers when they lay down their rules, is, how far are they going to take it to enforce them?
Right. And what happens with the people who have to do that enforcing?
Right.
How do you guarantee the health of a security personnel that has to put their hands on a customer that's not following your rules? I mean, they're exposing. There's no way to not get exposed to the coronavirus in that situation.
Yep. Well, we can only hope that it's going to run its course. I think we're at a situation right now, especially after Memorial Day, to see if there is going to be that second wave after all of these crowds have just come together and everything. So I guess, in a nutshell, that was the other question I wanted to ask you too, and we're talking about equipment for the bands. How realistic is it to ask the bands to bring their own microphones from your point of view?
Right. So the problem with that is, so a lot of times in a smaller venue, for a smaller situation, a singer might have a microphone already. They might be doing a bar gig, they would bring their own production and they would bring a microphone. But when you bring a microphone onto my stage, when I've got enough PA to cover 2,000 people, If it's a poorly, inexpensively made microphone, it's going to have problems with feedback. It's not going to all of the negative aspects of the inexpensive manufacturing are going to be amplified much more through my large PA system than what would they get with their small bar system. So if you had all the singers purchase the mic, first of all, good luck with that. But if you had them all purchase their own microphone and bring it, then you run into that thing where the guy's like, well, I had to buy a mic, so I went to Radio Shack and bought a $15 microphone, and then that's what I mixed through. And
well, you know, a lot of people don't realize. A lot of people don't realize. You know, you mentioned, you know, asking everyone to buy a microphone. Is these bands, in a lot of cases, by the time they've done their traveling and split and everything else, these guys are lucky to be making $50, $75 a night each.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, that's just, I hope, and maybe through this podcast, that that fact alone will get out to people and have them really realize that, you know, yeah, these guys play and sing, you know, because it's a passion of theirs. And in most cases where they're not name touring bands, they're not making much money. So, you know, work with them, bear with them, tip them well.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So I guess in a nutshell, we'll kind of hit some highlights here from a live music standpoint. Some of the things that really should be looked at that the venue should help with would be more sanitizing stations, making sure that we've got the production area gated off real well, fenced off really well. Ideally, and I know it's not easy to do, is, you know, have some sort of a green room for the production staff, the ones that are only there during the band changeovers.
Right.
What else am I missing here?
They're going to have to increase the quantity of microphones available, because sharing microphones is a guaranteed way. You have to have just extras. You're going to have to take the ones that have been used for one set. You're going to have to go away, and other microphones are going to have to come in. That may require rental, may require purchasing some more microphones, just so you have enough to switch.
Right.
Sanitizing wipes. You need to have some sanitizing materials as well.
Yeah, and the possibility you had mentioned of looking at some kind of a UV station at the very least.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
For them. And I would say, if it's an in-house sound system where, you know, the house itself provides the sound equipment, keep a good stock of windscreens, and be prepared to treat them like gloves. They've been used, the band's done, we take it off, throw it away for the next one.
Yep. That's a solution. I'm not 100% convinced that the windscreen is going to prevent all of the material from getting to the actual microphone, but it's better than nothing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think it's good information here. It's something I certainly wanted to share among, you know, the folks that we deal with, and let them kind of get an inside look at, there's more to it than just bringing the band on and playing.
Right, bring it on and go. Well, yeah.
Yep.
But there's all this other. Yep.
And hopefully, knock on wood, we're starting to get some positive feedback from some of the festivals again, that they may be moving forward. I know June and July is a big decision-making time for a lot of them to decide what they're going to do. We may be seeing some more activity in September and October.
Nice. Be good to get back to work, you know?
Yes. And hopefully, if a lot of these venues are able to do a lot of these things, that can increase the confidence in people coming back and attending. Matthew, I really appreciate your time. Looking forward to seeing you in September up in Indiana.
Absolutely.
They're still excited about doing that festival up there. So
good. It should be a good time.
Absolutely.